Welcome to Epilogue Podcast, the show where we discuss some stuff that happened on a different show ages ago which nobody really cares about anymore.
Hi, I'm Portponky.
And I'm LeBloc.
Today we're discussing Farscape, Season 3, Episode 6, Eat Me. John, Dargo, Chiana and Joel have a horrific time on a dying Leviathan with unexpected results. What did you think of this episode?
I liked it a lot. It's a huge departure from the usual tone. And
Yeah, you can say that.
Yeah, pretty far off from what we're used to. And they found a good excuse to have some cool lighting and set dressing in familiar places. We're very used to Moya and the corridors and all of that, but it looks and feels different here.
It might not surprise you that the tone of this episode makes it one of the most controversial of the show's entire run.
Oh, as in people don't like it because it's such a huge departure?
Well, there's been episodes before that have been a bit gross or a bit frightening.
There have been frightening moments and scenes, but I don't know about a whole episode like this.
Yeah, this is pretty horrific. If they were going for horror, they nailed it. I mean, obviously they were going for horror, but you get what I mean.
That would be strange if they weren't.
I think this episode is genius. And at the same time, I do completely understand why some people don't like it.
They're crazy. They should be on that ship.
No one should be on that ship. I'd like to contrast it to the previous episode, which used a lot of fairly standard sci-fi cliches. And the previous episode was decent. I liked it. But this episode feels more Farscape. It uses a bunch of cliches and just in weird and unexpected ways.
This is not your typical cloning episode.
Yeah, because the first rule of people getting cloned is that the clones always die.
Yeah, they don't stick around and play rock, paper, scissors.
We've had an episode of Farscape in Season 1. Or, what was it 2? My Three Crichtons, where he gets cloned, the future John and past John, and they both died. And there was an early Season 1 episode, Exodus from Genesis, where they got cloned and all the clones were bugs that went away, etc. But yeah, they've completely broken the first rule of duplicating characters, which is that one of the characters has to leave forever or die.
Not only that, usually it's, okay, the clone dies. Here they leave it up to interpretation. Well, not even interpretation. They leave it ambiguous. You don't know if that's the original Chiana. They could be the copy.
It's fairly explicit that there's no original. They're both copies, kind of.
Well, he says that they're equal, but then he also talks about how they degrade. So I would think even that first clone would have to not be 100% correct.
Yes. So how I parse it is they go in the sort of pink bag. I don't want to say how this works because obviously it's just silly fiction.
It's magic.
Let's say, for example, it splits the molecules of the person into two piles and then substitutes the missing molecules for each pile.
Okay.
But the substituted ones aren't exactly right. So the person's only 99.9% accurate. So both of them are slightly flawed.
Oh, okay.
And then when you compound that again and again, the flaws get worse and worse.
I like that.
That would probably mean that Dargo, Chiana, and both Johns have suffered minor physical sort of manipulation or damage. I don't know what you want to call it.
Sure, that makes sense to me and helps me understand the episode more because I was thinking, why don't you just clone that same first one all the time? But they would both degrade, so you can't.
Well, they're not clones. They're doubles.
Twinning. That also explains why he didn't like the word clone. It's not exactly cloning.
There is a lot of clever writing in this episode. For an episode that's kind of just a zombie horror flick homage, they did think about it quite carefully. For example, Chiana is deeply disturbed by being twinned and seeing herself die.
Yeah, of course. Because we're not equipped to experience that. That's not supposed to be part of anyone's life experience where you see yourself die, an exact version of yourself, well, more or less.
Farscape has always done this sort of thing well, where characters go through bad situations and then react badly. I don't know, it seems like other shows don't do this. Well, they'll be sad for a while, or they'll be like, whoa, that's messed up. Yeah, that's messed up.
And then that's it.
Yeah,
and they're fine the next episode.
Shooting guns and stuff.
But that scene really struck me, and it made me think about that, how that would be so messed up. How you don't even know if, well, yeah, there's no original copy. So you're seeing you die. You're not supposed to see that.
And she could maybe have even saved her.
Oh, I didn't even factor that in.
Because
That's
she
even
approaches
worse.
him.
Yeah.
And then chickens out. When you see it on film, it doesn't seem, it's just, seems like action. Just some intense scenes that happen. But if that did actually happen to a person, they would be seriously messed up. In fact, this whole episode was just really messed up. The Leviathan, Rovu, had a pilot
whose arms were repeatedly ripped off and eaten.
What was your reaction to that?
That's awful, and I don't blame him when he said kill me.
Pretty much. I think on a previous podcast, we talked about when John said to Doggo, please kill me.
Oh, yeah.
And how you got to have a lot of build up to that. Here, there is pretty much no build up.
No,
like
none at all.
Seconds.
He made noises and then said, please kill me. So I was wrong. You don't need build up. You could go straight to it.
Oh, I think the build up kind of happened all at once.
It was a compressed build up. Well, we can contextualize a lot of the build up because of the state of the ship, and his arms are missing, and dirty, weird people running around.
Yes, the entire ship is a living nightmare. Jewel was in this episode, and she tried to kill herself.
That's so weird that it's in this episode, and that's a funny part, or at least it's played for laughs. She's contemplating suicide and attempts it. Haha, you don't know how to use a pulse rifle.
I hate her so much. Gianna said she was going to kill Jewel, and John just says, whatever.
I love when the random bit falls off, and then Gianna yells at her and says, you broke it.
She probably did. It's her fault they were forced to land on this Leviathan.
And then Gianna punches Jewel several times. Teach her about violence.
Jewel, I feel bad for Jewel.
I'm at the point where I feel bad for her.
This episode was sick and twisted for Dargo and Tiana and John, and they're kind of hardened spacefarers. Jewel is just completely unprepared for. I'm trying not to quote the opening text now. She's completely unprepared for this kind of situation.
I don't think anyone's prepared to watch someone you love get drilled in the head and murdered.
She didn't see that.
Oh,
That
yeah.
she and John.
Cool.
She just needs to find her niche.
Screaming and melting certain metals.
Yes. Breaking things.
Screaming some more.
What do you think of Carvok?
Interesting guy. He was creepy. He suited the role.
He was very well spoken. He said something that I don't understand.
Which is?
When he's talking to Dargo about breeding, and he says that he'll spare Dargo half a cycle of pain.
Oh, yeah.
I did not understand what he was meaning by that.
That otherwise he'll torture him for half a cycle? I don't know. I didn't get it either. I forgot about it, though.
Really sparing someone by not torturing them.
Well, it's like stores when they say save $30. Well, no, I'm still spending money to buy that item. I'm not saving 30.
I don't think it was about torture. I don't know what it was about. But I kind of like that because it kind of makes him seem more chaotic. Like, and what was he talking about with he calls them the Zarai because he had something or other. He had some story about it.
Yeah, it's some sort of inside joke to himself. A lot of what he said, I just brushed it off. I didn't understand it, but then kind of had a vague understanding where I wasn't lost, but then I didn't totally understand either. It made him seem scarier.
He's kind of unpredictable and weird. Also, you could see into his head.
Yeah, that was pretty cool.
I don't even understand how that works. How do they do that with makeup? Answers on a postcard.
No, that's his real head. They found a guy that looks exactly like that. That's no makeup.
Seems exploitative. Wait, no makeup at all?
None. They really lucked out.
That must have been terrible for the other people at the audition.
Well, yeah, you know you're not getting the part. You see that guy walk in.
With his brain hanging out. And presumably he had the drill as well.
Oh, of course. That was his own making.
He's just a guy that wandered onto the set.
They didn't even have auditions. He just walked onto set and they said, all right, we can work with this.
Did this episode feel like setup?
No. But by that question, I'm guessing it is.
I wouldn't say it is. I only ask because it's a common complaint about this episode.
I don't
agree.
I don't agree either. It feels like an isolated thing. They went to the ship, and then bad stuff happened. And then we have John and John 2 at the end. And that I could see as, okay, obviously they have to deal with that later, but...
No, it is just one John in the next episode.
They hit the reset button without explaining.
Yeah, I mean, obviously that is a setup for the next episode. That's something that's going to be addressed.
Sure, but the episode didn't feel empty. It didn't feel like they wanted a clone of John. Okay, how do we get to that point? Let's make a sad excuse of an episode to get there. It doesn't feel like that at all, which is what I would consider a setup episode where nothing of consequence happens really, and then they just need to get to a certain point.
Strangely, I think they did write the episode like that.
Oh.
They came up with the two Johns idea first and then made this episode to set it up. So when people complain that this episode is set up, they're actually correct in that it, in some sense, is.
Setup isn't inherently bad.
Well, I don't think it feels like that. Like, if John had not been duplicated and they'd escaped on the shuttlecraft thing. Shuttlecraft? That's Star Trek. Transport pods. There you go. They escaped on the transport pod at the end with just one John. I don't think the episode would have felt sort of bad and empty. It would have still been a really horrific adventure that everyone wanted to forget.
But that ending is one hell of a capper.
Oh yeah, that's why I said this episode is genius. It takes a bunch of standard things. Another standard thing they do is they're visiting a different Leviathan, so it's the same sets, but they did a great job of distinguishing it.
There's not a single moment where it feels like the same set.
They also had a fake character death. Something this season has actually been quite guilty of. But here it was at least fairly... Well, I don't know, did you believe Dargo had died?
I did, yeah.
It's pretty convincing, because it's just really pretty vile episode.
That and how it happens. It's really quick. He doesn't get to have a ceremonial speech talking about avenge Jothi or whatever. It's just, bam, he's dead. And that's how I would expect Dargo to die. I don't see him dying in battle. He's too good at that. It would have to be some extreme circumstance where everything just goes wrong.
That given, Zan did have a 10-minute goodbye.
Yeah, I remember.
There was a Crace and Talon subplot.
Yeah, they were both having a nap.
Indeed. Any theories on who blew up Talon?
No, but I'll just say Scorpius, because why not?
Yeah, that's a reasonable guess. I actually am struggling to remember. Crace also has the chip that he mentioned at the end of season 2, where he said Aaron would have loved to have seen what's on this chip. I don't think he called it a chip.
Oh, I forgot all about that.
So yeah, Crace has a bunch of mysteries up his sleeve. Also, Rigel is a massive jerk.
Why?
Because it's getting a little bit tiring how he's like, oh, let's backstab everyone all the time. Like they would agree to go to McDonald's and he'd order an Uber to go to Burger King. That's like just the kind of guy he apparently is.
That's who he is. We can't all be good people. Well, I guess we could. But
it would be nice.
There are people who are not so good. I like the diverging interests, how everyone else is becoming closer and feel more like a family, whereas Rigel is still out for himself.
I think we haven't had a good Rigel moment in a while.
We're due for a secret hero Rigel moment, or crawling through a tiny space moment.
I would prefer the former.
Yeah. He does seem to be relegated to just, hey, be the terrible person in the room and say some awful things. Whereas before, he used to be more involved and not so bad.
Is he becoming Flanderized?
Oh, yeah, I think so. He's become much harder to defend. I used to have an easy time defending Rigel. Not so much now.
He hasn't had many moments where he used his wisdom and ability to negotiate and read people and stuff like that. The sort of political leaning stuff. He
yeah, that's
hasn't
great.
done any of that for ages. Like at least 10 episodes or something. So his character is starting to fall flat a little bit.
Agreed. It's too bad. He's at his best when he's pretending to be terrible, or he's seemingly being terrible, but then he has a secret plan and there's more to it. Now it's just him being terrible, and it's not to mask anything. He's just awful.
I don't like the concept of everyone secretly being a good person on the inside. Because I don't really think that's true. And Rigel did kind of send it up by being, instead of a good person, just a smart arse on the inside.
Yeah.
You know, you get the better of people and wrap it up and hide it, like he did with the Zenitian pirates on 2 different occasions. So I would like to see him do more of that stuff in the upcoming episodes.
Yes, please.
I mean, they are just dossing around in space, so not like he has had a chance to shine. I mean, I'm not saying he's not terrible. Do you have a quote from this episode?
As you can see, once you've been twinned about 30 or 40 times, you're not much good for conversation. Not that you're especially witty right now.
I thought you would choose Korvok. He had a bunch of good lines. It's very creepy when he says, this is not going to be verbatim, but food, family, what's the difference?
Oh, yeah.
It's kind of a bit hammed up. But I think it still works.
Well, there's no way Karvak doesn't know he's creepy. So he's probably playing it up to amuse himself.
Actually, he might not know he's creepy. When Dargo offers him passage off the ship, he doesn't understand why that would be of any value.
How are those connected?
Because it shows you can't assign his thinking patterns to those of a reasonable person.
Okay, I buy that.
Dude was messed up.
Well, his brain's exposed.
Yeah. There are people who have exposed brains all over the place, and they're not drilling people's heads.
As far as you know, they could be really good at it and haven't been caught.
Wait, I like how you didn't disagree with me about exposed brains.
Oh, his drilling bothered me because with Dargo he went near the temple, and then with Chiana through the neck. Why? Other than because it looks brutal. Wouldn't he want to be consistent?
I guess he just drills into the brain and sucks up some brain goo and launches it into his own brain to top up his brain because it keeps falling out the side of his head.
He runs on brain juice.
It doesn't make any sense, but it is very disgusting and creepy.
Which is all it needs to be. It doesn't need to make any sense.
Oh, I have a couple bits of trivia that I've overlooked. You're going to love these. So the first one, Rovu's pilot is voiced by Sean Masterson.
Why is that name familiar?
He's I don't know. He's a puppeteer for Pilot on Moya, and his voice is used for Pilot before it's dubbed over.
Dubbed over, so he's not in the episode?
So yeah, he speaks Pilot's lines on set, but then Pilot's voice is dubbed over.
Oh, okay.
Because it's clearly modified.
Right.
But this was his voice. This is what this is how the crew usually hear the crew. This is how the actors usually hear pilot on the set.
That's a neat bit of trivia.
Oh, wow, okay. The other bit of trivia, Guy Gross, the guy that does the soundtracks, added a shakuhachi, a Japanese flute, to the Rovu Leviathan scenes, because it's a weird sounding instrument.
Good job, Guy, because the music was eerie and perfect.
Did you actually notice any of the soundtrack stuff? You don't usually.
I did. One moment that stood out was when they first landed and they see the skeleton. I think Dario says it's probably Sebastian, and then the music really stood out to me.
If the music stood out to you, then he definitely did a good job. I say this because previously when I've brought up soundtrack stuff, usually you have not noticed.
That's true, but here it does a fantastic job of setting the tone and differentiating it from the typical fare.
Also, I mean, it's not like I always notice. I read it all off the wiki. Good job. All right, let's go on to the next episode.
2 Johns.
Twice the Johns.
Johnage.
Yep.
That's the official measurement of a John Crichton.
Excellent. Let's do it.